Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast that's dedicated to talking about mental health with people who I've met during my career, through my life, and so on. Today, I have the great pleasure of introducing Paul Tilstone. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. So as I always do on these podcasts, I'll introduce Paul from my perspective, how I know Paul, how we met, and how our conversations have gone over the last few years. And then Paul, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself because that's what it's all about, is getting to learn about you, hear some of your stories. So Paul and I have known each other for a number of years, actually, through a mutual love of the business travel world. And Paul is instrumental in lots of things that happen in that world in terms of raising conversations, supporting communities, and helping people to understand more about all the evolution of that industry. It's fantastic work that you do, Paul. And Paul and I sort of met, I guess, to start talking about mental health a couple of years ago. Paul attended one of my training sessions and was a great participant in that, learning about sort of mental health, the conversation of it, and what to do and how to support people who might be showing some of those signs of challenges and so on. And it's been great because we've remained friends since, and we talk, as we need to, when we need to. Paul's on my list of people that I like to check in with, see how things are going, and one of my mates, that's how I see him. So it's wonderful to have you on this podcast, Paul. So introduction from yourself, please, mate.
Thank you, Matt. It is a pleasure to know you, and I'm always highly appreciative of the fact that you actually do take the time to check in. It's very impressive when you do it, and it seems incredibly genuine as well. So thank you very much. I've been in the travel industry for somewhere between 25 and 30 years. I'm never quite sure. I run a consultancy called Festive with my business partner, Caroline Strachan. I'm a father to two boys, 17 and 11, husband to a wife called Jackie, who I met at Portman Travel many years ago. And I'm a resident of Dorking in Surrey, but a global citizen who has traveled quite a lot. I guess that's how I'd describe myself.
Brilliant stuff. And you've had many roles in the travel industry over those years, right?
Yeah, I started when I was 21 as a Thompson rep. For 3 years in northern Greece, Thailand and Cyprus. Best job in the world for a 21-year-old, but as long as you can cope with 90 plus hours a week, which is what you put through. And then moved into TMC sales for about 14 years across small to mid-sized TMCs. And then I found my home, I think, when I became the CEO of the Institute of Travel Management for a 5-year period. That's where I met Caroline, my business partner. Then I helped GBTA launch in all markets outside the United States. And then ultimately, 6 years ago, co-launched Festive Consultancy.
Brilliant. So lots of sort of transitional changes for you then, different types of roles in there. So this is a conversation about mental health, right?
Yeah.
You know what we talk about. You've listened to some of the recordings that we've done as well. So let's talk about your experience, Paul, in terms of sort of a mental health journey that you've had, through your life in different changes and etc. Whatever you want to feel comfortable to talk about, you define what that looks like.
Well, last time we talked about this in your class, I broke down. So, But it was incredibly empowering experience, and I should amplify that. You didn't push me to break down. It was just I went with the flow, and actually was quite emotional about the whole thing. So I brought my tissue in case I get a bit emotionally overcast today. I guess I would describe my experience with mental health as one where I've been getting to know myself a lot better over the past, certainly the past 10 years. And prior to that, I don't really think I gave it much thought. That's possibly a reflection of my kind of age and where I was at. But also, I would say I'm not sure that the conversation was quite as overt then 10 years, 15 years ago as it is today. And, I want to thank you for being a facilitator of that conversation. Generally, I'm a glass half full sort of person. Generally, I'm an extrovert, so I get my energy off interactions with other people. Yeah. But there's the other side, which is I have found myself how I deal with pressure and not having that human contact has been quite a challenge. And I recognized that every year I do go through a blue period, and I've worked out how to manage for that. And I think that's been my biggest thing, is just recognizing it and putting in kind of mitigating behaviors to try and solve for it.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, interesting. So let's talk about those behaviors, because it's important. And one thing that I talk about a lot with people is this sort of element of self-reflection, where you can see things are starting to feel a little bit heavier, the burden's becoming a little bit greater, or some challenges start to form sort of in our minds. So what do you do? What happens? How do you manage that process? What do you tend to do?
Well, I think the first thing is I always kind of felt a little fraudulent. It's like there are people who have real mental health issues, and then, you know, I'm sort of, well, I just get down a bit occasionally. So is that really something that I should be worried about, or even talking to others about? And I think you kind of, you know, you need to get over that, because it's not about negative mental health. It's about the whole thing, and including positive mental health. So I've become much more relaxed about disclosing and talking with people about how I'm feeling. And especially my business partner, we have a really open mental health relationship, and really positive, I think, within the Festive Road organization as well. I think the first thing is kind of recognizing the signs of, you know, when something is coming on, when something's beginning to manifest. But to try and mitigate, I mean, I found exercise. I wouldn't call myself a gym bunny. I sort of sometimes make a bit of a half-assed effort to be fit, but I'm always better off for it when I do some physical exercise. And that link between mind and body always fascinates me. I take vitamin D a lot. I've cut back my travel by about, I say, a third, because of the stress that an impact that was having both on my physical well-being and my mental well-being. And whenever I do travel, I try and build in, especially if it's somewhere where there's a bit of sunshine, I will try and build in an afternoon by the pool. You know, I'm still working, but at least I'm receiving some sunshine, and I'm having a really nice ambient environment in which to relax. So I'd say they're the kind of main behaviors to mitigate how I'm feeling.
Right. Yeah. But and keep going with them. You know, I always encourage people, even the gym thing. You know, I one of the podcasts was launched this morning, and it was, you know, not this morning in terms of this one being launched on the 23rd of December, but, and it was about, I go to the gym maybe once a week, and it's fine. You know, it's just that recognition that it helps. That's so important. You know, harness that thought, and laying by the pool, there should be no shame or guilt in doing that. It's very much, it's about looking after me, and we have to become quite selfish to self-care. That's how some people feel, but give yourself that permission to do it. It's all it is. Nobody has to tell you to do it. You can give yourself that permission, and I think that's critical. So I want to touch on one thing you said in there as well about the travel stress. So you've reduced your travel, and of course right now we're under a number of sort of restrictions when it comes to the ability to be able to travel, especially overseas. So how were you when you were traveling at that max point, you know, where you were doing lots, because you're a very frequent traveler, you know, you were traveling all over the world, and how did that make you feel? Because this is obviously a pet subject for mine, but also it's a big revelation for lots of people around. Lots of people struggle with this stuff.
And actually the pandemic and sort of localized lockdown and has really amplified some of the thoughts that I previously had. Clearly it's gone too far, and I want to be back on the road. But I was traveling probably about 50 to 60% of the time. My wife used to say that I'm home for about 4 months of the year. I certainly, there is no question that it has impacted my weight. You know, I mean, I sit in nice seats on aircraft. I get people coming over saying, would I like a second whiskey? I go to conferences and events where sometimes the food isn't fantastic. You know, we all know what in our own industry, how we don't cater enough for physical well-being, and there's no question that impacts mental. Jet lag means that I'm generally too knackered to go and do a run or go to the gym, or maybe I actually need the time to do a proposal or to jump on a call with a client. But I think the biggest thing for me that I realized during the pandemic is that I had lost any sense really of community within my own town where I live. I'd become, and I described this to someone the other day, like my community is this group of people within the business travel industry who move from one conference to another. And I might not see them all moving, but I see them every year at the same events. And there's, I take great great enjoyment in seeing those people, and they bring me a component of mental well-being to their friends, and I have conversations with them. But I would literally walk through my town and say to my wife, "Oh God, that just closed down." She said, "Closed down 3 years ago, Paul." And it made me realize I've lost a bit of my roots within my local town.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? And I think that is something that a lot of people have recognized, and it's something you recognize yourself, but I've seen that with our community. We've lived in our street. We live in a close with 15 houses, and we, until this year, hadn't really spoken to any of our neighbors, with the exception of one or two. There's the odd couple, obviously, but most of them we'd never really spoken to. We didn't really know them. And then we started applauding the NHS on a Thursday night, and now it's like, oh, we're all friends and we're looking for an opportunity to have a beer together or drink together and do that community element. And I think that's I've seen that very much so from our perspective as well. So go on.
It's almost like people live parallel lives, and what you need is just points that just make sure you touch other people's lives along the way. What I would say is, I think the decentralization of the office that we're seeing at the moment, and this move to work from home or work from anywhere, has the potential to be really powerful in the way that people feel more connected to their local communities. Because I used to see people who would leave at 5:45, 6 a.m. in the morning and not come back till 9 o'clock at night because they were commuting to London. They have the same level of disjoint probably with their local environment as I did.
Yep, so true, absolutely. And there is that then question mark, isn't there, over why would I do that moving forward, or what's the model look like? And we could talk about that, I'm sure, to the nth degree, and it's been talked about in many forums. But so I want to delve a bit deeper into your business world, Paul. Not going into anything, it's sinister within there, of course there isn't. But in terms of, when I say delve deeper, I mean in the good sense of delving deeper, because you set up this organization, Festive Road, with Caroline.
Yes, correct.
And you've got a lot of publicity around what you do, and it's fantastic, the visibility that you have. You have a community within Festive Road. Talk to me a bit about that community, because I'm connected to many of them already, and I love them all in their own individual ways. But tell me, or tell the listeners to this, what that community means to you guys.
Yeah, so I think one philosophy that I've tried to live by in my career is to always be myself. Now, I wouldn't say I've always succeeded at it, but and sometimes it's certainly got me into some hot water. But I think that's a core philosophy that we hold dearly within Festive Road, and Caroline wholeheartedly believes in the same core principle. So what that means is that sometimes we have people join us. We call them roaders. There's 20 roaders in total. They're spread over 3 continents, and they sometimes come to us with very vibrant personalities, and they know who they are. Sometimes they come to us with personalities that have been shaped by the corporate world, and actually they don't yet know who they are, or they don't feel comfortable just being who they are. And I think what we have created is an environment that allows people to just relax a little bit and recognize that one of the roaders' personalities could be very, very different to another roader's personality. We're not looking for cookie cutter people. We're looking for people who celebrate their own differences and celebrate the differences of others. And I think that creates, I believe, and certainly we do what we call a health check with our roaders every year to ask them how they're feeling. But certainly it appears to create an environment which is healthy for all of us to operate in. And our belief is that translates into personality and connection with the customer, and it comes across in the individual work that each of the roaders do as well, which can be quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. And the different dynamics within that environment, or that community of people, the different types of people you have, it is really interesting. You say it's not cookie cutter, and I get that. I think that's amazing. I applaud those organizations that take that approach, because you know what, if everybody's got the same job description, you have to be honest, you can't expect the same result, right? Even if they're all roaders, consultants, or whatever you want to determine the title or the role looks like, everybody's unique and different. And I know, like I say, many of those different people within your organization, and even I think I want to say it, you've even got a farmer in your organization.
We have,
Ian, who's got his own farm.
Yeah, I mean, that's a sort of hyper example of what you can achieve within Festive Road,
Yeah,
because Ian had always wanted to run a farm, but of course he was tied to the requirement to provide for his family, which meant
sure.
getting a job, which meant 5 days a week, which meant he could never build a farm. And coming to Festive Road, the model that we have means that people can self-determine how much they work.
Yep.
It's interesting mindset wise. A couple of times, some of the roaders have said, I want to take next Thursday off. Is that okay? And I said, what are you asking me for? You
Yeah,
just say, Paul, I'm not going to be around next Thursday.
yeah,
And, you know, empowers people to work on the projects they want, to work the days they want, to work the hours they want, as long as they're delivering. With Ian, that meant that he could have mental stimulation working on consulting projects, and at the same time build what is now a very, very successful farm. And I think mentally and physically, he's never been happier than he is at the moment. But I mean, maybe that's a future guest for
yeah.
you.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, I'd love to. I love this diversification of things and people, and we have to remind ourselves. This is the thing that keeps coming to mind when I talk to you and I think about the Festive Road model. I think about the work that you guys are doing, and you're all independent in the work that you do, in the way that you do it, and you're all unique in your own skill sets and things. Is that realization that never be linked to just one thing, never just focus
Yeah.
on I'm a one trick thing. It's not. I look at my role in my career. I'm in mental health now. I wasn't in mental health for 20 odd years because I was in a corporate travel world and
Yes.
selling travel solutions and whatever else that was going on. And it took me a moment of clarity, which was when I went into crisis, when I had my own mental health issue, to recognize actually I can do different things. I can be different things. I can evolve myself. And I think that's sort of quite a similar parallel to what you've got. So within Festive Road, it's interesting you said about the Thursday, having Thursday off, and I'm very similar with my team. It's like
Yeah.
you take what you need, and I know you're going to do a great job still. It's not that they're not doing the work. It's not going, I'm taking every day off and never working. It's that we have to be open and honest. When I'm struggling a little bit, sometimes I need a break.
Yeah.
So what's your work routine, Paul? What do you do in terms of making sure that works for you?
So, I mean, I guess the first thing is this is kind of related to the realization that I sort of struggle every year around that September time as well,
Yep.
mentally.
Yep.
Caroline and I, probably 3 years into the business, decided that actually in order to maintain the ability to drive the business in the way that we wanted, we needed to give ourselves a break as well. That kind of core philosophy within Festive Road of you choose how you work, which could be about how you're feeling, but could be about family commitments or
Yeah, of
other
course.
stuff you want to do, and people volunteer and do things like that, was that actually we probably let our flexibility dissolve a little bit, and we needed to focus on that. So we moved to a 4-day week. I think it was probably three quarters of the way through 2019, yeah. And I at first I think I found it quite strange, but after a while, my wife calls it's Paul's Day, because I get to determine what I want to do on that day. At the weekend, I've spent time, fixing the light or mowing the lawn or going shopping, talking with the kids, going for a walk with the dog. Monday, if I want to sit down and watch 4 hours of The Crown, that's my choice. If I want to write some pages of a book that maybe I'm thinking about, that's my choice. If I want to go and walk the dog on my own and just get some mental headspace, that's my choice. And she's been brilliant with that. So I take Mondays off and Caroline takes Fridays off. So we've always got cover.
Yep.
And of course, during the height of the pandemic, we actually reverted back to 5 days a week because we had so much work to do on the permissible travel framework.
Yep.
We've started to go back to that 4-day week so that we can maintain the focus that we need, but also maintain mental and physical well-being as well to do the job we need to do.
Yeah, and that's great. And that I'm glad to hear you going back towards that 4 days, because you're right. If you can have that day to you, for you to look after you, then why wouldn't you want to have that built into your, I do that with golf. I try to play golf once a week, and I don't fix myself on a specific day to play golf. It's more about the availability of a friend to play with usually. And then I'll block out that as a half day, and as long as I don't have training, of course, and things like that, it could be any day of the week. but I think it's really important to continue those thoughts. Of course, we're in a different position in the fact that we're owners of companies,
Yes.
and that does always dictate the sort of the flow of how that works.
Yeah.
But we are seeing a lot more flexibility around working patterns for people. That's definitely one of the side parts of the whole pandemic. How have you been able to support the rest of your team through this crisis, through the last, what is it now, 8 months, 9 months, maybe 10
Yeah.
months, I guess.
I mean, so I think first of all, we're very whether fortunate or whether we kind of always planned it this way, and this has been a heightened environment to demonstrate that we did the right thing. Is the business itself is established in a very virtual format. We have no physical office space, so we have lots of cloud systems that allow us to communicate very effectively. Whether it's systems to house all the important corporate work we do and to protect all that, whether it's the Slack system that we use for channel communication between roaders. And on that Slack, for example, we have a water cooler channel where people can just dump and say whatever they want. We have a diversity and inclusion channel where people can get into dialogue around that. And we have channels that celebrate success of roaders and success of Festive Road. And sometimes those successes of roaders aren't Festive Road related. It could be that, Ian Jones has produced a new cocktail he's selling from his farm, or that Katie has just run another marathon in Italy, or whatever it is. So I think having the infrastructure to allow that support, not just from Caroline and I to the roaders, but the roaders to themselves and the roaders to Caroline and I as well. It's a completely sort of connected group, is really important. The second thing is, I think, agreeing a purpose, focusing on a purpose during the pandemic, and being really strong on what it is that we need to kind of stop, start, continue in order to ensure that we come out of this whole process, not just stronger in our infrastructure and our focus, but actually the lessons that we learn going through this process, we don't forget and we can apply to our business for the future. So I think that sort of combination of structure, purpose, and regular check-ins, and knowing that the door is always open if somebody's feeling down, or they've got anxiety over something that's coming up, or whatever it is. I think those are probably the key components.
Brilliant. Well, it's great, and that connection and that communication is critical, and continuing it, because you were already doing it pre this crisis, which I think is really good. And a lot of companies have had to sort of take a standing jump in some of this stuff, because they haven't had a culture of doing this, and it comes down to that point of culture, doesn't it? It's very, very fundamental.
It's very hard as well, because you can't take a business that's been in a physical office location and dump it into a virtual world and keep everything the same. The processes, the way you engage with people, it has to become much more fluid in how you work with people. And you have to, there's a certain transparency in a virtual world that to some extent, I don't think you get in a physical office location. In a virtual world, you have to trust people, but you also, everybody can see where the successes are. Everybody can see where the struggles are. So it becomes a much more transparent environment.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with you. I think that's it, isn't it? You have to remain that connected, because I've heard lots of those bad stories, or those difficult, challenging stories where people have just been, they've been put on furlough, they hear nothing.
Yes.
And it's, if we're talking about anxiety, man, this is like anxiety simplified, isn't it? Don't talk to people, don't communicate with them, and guess what? They're going to feel quite worried. And I don't think that's in the mindset for everyone.
I think it was sort of, you were tempted to look at furlough and think, well, at least people have kept their job and they're still receiving money. But the mental anguish people on furlough must have had about whether they would have a job to come back to. And, we've seen, unfortunately, the devastation of employment in our sector. And I'm sure there are, huge numbers of people who are still incredibly worried about whether they're going to have a career in this industry. And I really feel for them. I really do.
Yeah, and I do absolutely too as well. And I think, the more we can talk about mental health, the more that we can encourage anybody that is listening that is, sadly has lost their job or is on furlough still, or are feeling low and worried and vulnerable about any of these concerns. Talking is such a critical part of it. Tell people, explain it, use your words to put language around that. And I think it is such an important part of this whole conversation of mental health. So question for you then, Paul. So
Yeah.
from a positive sort of mental perspective, so lots of things that you recognize that you've worked on, and of course this is a season where it's feeling a little bit sort of more challenging for a lot of people, I guess. What's your positive thoughts for the future? What do you see happening, and how do you see it sort of hopefully coming to a point that we feel more able to, or less restrictions, let's say?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it's funny because throughout this whole 9-month period, facts actually change on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So, to try and judge how you're feeling based on facts that are out there, I think is really hard. And actually, you can be feeling quite positive one minute, then have a conversation with someone who gives you a data point to say, oh, bookings are still 97% down, and we've got no sign of it coming back, and that can bring you kind of down. So I think, but overall, that the sort of the sentiment, it's a real intangible thing, whether you're feeling positive about the future or negative about the future. But having gone through kind of a roller coaster of emotions over the last 9 months, we definitely feel much more positive about what stands before us. And I think not just in how and when travel will start to return, but in what format it will start to return. And I think I said to you before, generally in life, I'm a glass half full sort of person. So I do tend to see the optimistic side. And I think there are so many things that we've learned in the last 9 months we can apply to our industry and come out with a much better industry. We talk sustainability, we talk about the importance of people and looking after people, but I think they were sort of secondary to managing cost. Yep. And my sense is we're coming out of this with a sort of a triangle of equal focus. That's going to vary company by company. It's going to vary sector by sector. But what an opportunity to have an industry where we're providing really valuable services across people, planet, and profit as well. That would be amazing.
Oh, and I'm 100% champion of that. Of course, my area of focus is the people element, which is support the people and give the people the right tools, the right, help when they're struggling, never let people sort of languish, with, with the hard feelings that they're struggling with things and they can't talk. We've got to get people open in that conversation. The Business Travel Wellbeing Community, I'll put a shameless plug in there for them. As a co-founder with Katie from Festive, of course, who's one of the co-founders there. That's what our target really is to try and encourage this conversation of mental health, physical health, well-being as a whole subject matter for everyone. We've all got it. We've all in it. You've said about your experience of frequent travel and now your adjustments that you'll make, which will be a sun lounger or or whatever it is you need. And that's what we've got to try and capture. Yeah. The reality is we're all very unique, Paul. You're unique and I'm unique. It would be remiss of me if I didn't talk about the elephant in the room, so for most people, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I suggest you flip over to the YouTube channel or you look at least at the picture that accompanies this, because when we talk about the elephant in the room, people tend to think of it as being mental health, the issues that we have. We don't talk about mental health. There's a big sign behind me for anybody that can see it, which says we need to talk about mental health, which, hey, what are we doing right now? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about how to maintain positive mental health, how to support mental health when it's struggling, and how to make it feel a bit better. So the reason I say about the elephant in the room is that for anybody that hasn't been watching us, Paul's dressed as a Christmas tree. That will sound really interesting for anybody listening to the podcast. And I'm dressed as Santa. So it's quite an interesting one. And I want to just tell a brief story, Paul, and then I'll let you tell your side of this, why you're dressed as a Christmas tree. So Paul and I briefly spoke just yesterday morning, so the day before we recorded this podcast, and I came on a Zoom call to be greeted by a middle-aged man. Am I okay to say a middle-aged man? I'm a middle-aged man as well.
Knackered man.
No, I would never say that. I'm white-haired with a white beard, and this hat that I'm wearing doesn't make me look any better. It looks like I've got a dodgy haircut. and I'm greeted by a middle-aged man wearing a Christmas tree outfit. So that was quite an interesting surprise. So it made perfect sense that this is the last podcast that we're releasing just before Christmas. So Paul, talk to me about the Christmas tree and send a message of Christmas hope to people if you can.
I will, yeah. I think the first thing I'd say is, for anyone who's looking at the actual video, you look like a fabulous version of like young Santa Claus when he was in his 30s or 40s.
The belly's coming.
Yeah, of course, it's already here for some of us.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm wearing a Christmas tree is you were asking how we kind of support our team. Occasionally we have what we call a festival, where we bring the whole team together. That can be a virtual environment or a physical environment, which we try to do sort of every 18 months. And the festival that we have coming up, it would have happened just before this goes out, actually, on the 18th. Is one where we're doing kind of festive bingo and some other bits and pieces with the whole team. But I'm delivering it, moderating it, managing it. And my business partner, Caroline, in the post, this came through the other day, and I opened it up and it was this Christmas tree outfit. And Caroline said, I think you're going to need this for the call on the 18th. Of course, you know, it's to make me look ridiculous. And of course, I love the fact that I look ridiculous, but it's also just to kind of break down barriers, make people relax, and you know, overall just to have a bit of fun and a bit of laughter. And it's amazing how much that laughter kind of contributes to a sense of physical and mental well-being. And I think you know, it's important to recognize that we have all been through an incredibly tough 10-month period. We will never, hopefully, have another time like this again. And, you know, some of us have been very much affected by it and others not so much. But the travel industry as a whole, compared to other industries, has gone through so much that there is only one way to deal with this, which is to look forward, to look with optimism, to look with hope, and say it will get better. There is no question about that. And when it does, and we get together again, we shall celebrate the hard times we've been through and the fact that we are back together in person at these events and seeing people. And I'll give you a hug, Matthew, and you can make me cry again.
I'll take it. And you know what? I love a hug. You know, I love a hug. Everybody knows I love a hug. Yeah, you know what wise words from a Christmas tree. Hey, if ever you needed wisdom, ask the tree. That's what they say, right? You know, I thought you changed something about yourself. I thought it might be new glasses or something. I wasn't quite sure. But this has been amazing. Paul, I'm so happy that you agreed to do this and to do it in a way that, you know, we've had some serious conversation here. We've talked about, you know, the reality of what's happened, where you've been, the journey that you've been on, and with you and Caroline, you know, sending huge kudos to the work that you do to support your community and all the community of Festive Road, of course, and the wider one that you work with, of course. And, you know, so in closing from me, I just want to say a massive thank you, you know, and a Merry Christmas and a happy festive season. I guess that works really well for you guys, right?
It does, yeah, it's trending.
Yeah, it will be trendy, yeah, trending. So you know, and all the best for everything, because, you know, at the moment, let's just keep sending that hope. That kindness is such a critical point as well. It is. You know, you're a kind gent, and keep doing that, because it's such an important thing.
Just before you close, Matt, I would like to send a big thanks to Dave Clare, because I think his openness on the podcast I listened to last week, it continues to amaze me, Dave, and it sort of, that's what prompted me to connect with you about this particular podcast series. And I think he's amazing for opening up the way he does, and for keeping people going as well. So I just wanted to get that in as well.
100%. Second that, champion that. You know, everyone that's coming on these podcasts has just got an incredible perspective, because it's theirs. It's their story. You own everything that you've been through, that you do, that you support others through, as I do with my story, as Dave does with his, and all the other wonderful people. And we're very lucky that, you know, I don't really have to do much with these podcasts apart from hit a record button, put them online, and then people listen. These are unedited, unscripted. There is nothing that we prepare in advance in terms of, you know, with the exception of there's just a small framework we use for the conversation.
Just the way it should be.
Yeah, you know, I don't go to the pub with an agenda usually. You know, it's more. Well, I don't go to the pub at the moment because, like many people, because I don't like Scotch eggs. So that is it. Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate it. as I always say in these sessions, if anybody is struggling or does need extra help and support, this is a difficult period for lots of people, and this is a season where, as much as we want to enjoy, and we will have time to to spend more time with family or friends, hopefully, it's also a lonely time for a lot of people. There are a lot of people that struggle with this, and I just want to reach out through this, and I'm sure, Paul, you support me in all of this sort of thought as well, and say, if you are struggling, if you need a safe space to talk, if you need anything, no, you're not on your own. Okay, you are not alone. My Christmas wish is that anybody that feels lonely and isolated, you get somebody who you can talk to, that you feel comfortable talking to. And it doesn't have to be about how you're feeling. It can just be about just connecting as humans. We really have this wonderful opportunity to do that. If you know somebody that might be struggling, if you know somebody that's on their own, why don't you reach out and talk to them, or just drop them a message, because a small message can make a massive difference when somebody's feeling lonely. And if you need extra support or help, or you want to talk to somebody in confidence, Samaritans is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's free to call on 116123. Please do pick up the phone if you need a safe space to just talk about things that might be worrying you at the moment. It's there for everyone and for everybody. You don't have to be at the bottom to contact Samaritans. It's there for anyone. So I just want to wish everybody a very, very happy Christmas. I hope things are okay over this period. Paul, Merry Christmas to you.
And you, Matt. Thank you very much for having me on. Thanks for doing a great job for the industry. Big love.
Big love. And a big purple heart comes up there. I love that. All right, I'll catch you soon, Paul. Take care, mate.
All right. Cheers. Bye.